Well, this is our last chance to look at the issues and contests before Tuesday's election. And joining me in the studio to do just that are Lisa Vorderbrueggen, political editor of the Contra Costa Times, and David Baker, energy reporter with the San Francisco Chronicle, and Musiker, reporter for KQED FM News, and Marisa Lagos, political reporter for the Chronicle's Sacramento Bureau. And we'll start with one of the races where controversial ads have been flooding the airways, the Democratic primary for Attorney General. So, Marisa, what are the issues here and what are the candidates' position on those issues?
I'm not sure you'd really know that from watching your television or even looking at the online ads here. I mean, really, all the Democrats in this race, there's, let's see, 6 of them on the ballot, 6 viable ones, we'll say. Really, District Attorney Kamala Harris from San Francisco and former Facebook executive Chris Kelly have been kind of dominating this. Kelly's poured $12 million into his campaign. Harris has been pretty successful at fundraising. And they don't really differ that much on issues, I'd say. I mean, they might be talking about slightly different things, but really what they've been doing is hitting each other. Harris has been under fire for the drama at the crime lab here in town. Kelly has been hit by her camp for his involvement in Facebook's privacy settings and policies. So, you know, you're not going to hear a lot of difference in positions from them when you actually get down to business.
Well, in this area, it seems as though most times when we see Kamala Harris, it's in a Kelly commercial saying what she has not done.
That's true. And I think, you know, we saw her for many weeks sort of ignoring his ads. In the last few weeks, she has been hitting back. Just today, Kelly rolled out an online ad featuring 4 retired San Francisco police officers who are attacking Harris's record here in town. She's kind of trying to paint herself as smart on crime. That's been her campaign tagline. He's talked a lot about the internet and how to sort of handle the online issues that have come up and the way that, you know, the top cop could really be involved in that. But more than anything, what we've really heard is attacks and a lot of money.
Are both of these candidates, do you think, Marisa, damaged because, as you said, Harris's problems with the police crime lab and Kelly's problems with the Facebook privacy issues, are they both too damaged to win? Is there perhaps another candidate who's going to surprise us?
You know, I would be surprised if that happens. What I think, who else, we should probably mention the other candidates. Former City Attorney Rocky Delgadillo from Los Angeles, who really may have some pull down there, but wasn't that popular, and that's a huge market. 3 state assemblymen, Ted Lieu, Alberto Tarico, and Pedro Nava. Because if this is so crowded, anything could happen, right? You don't need more than 30% of the vote to win this race. But I think more likely what we'll see is that if District Attorney Steve Cooley from LA can pull it out on the Republican side, either Kelly or Harris, probably Harris, looking at most polls, is going to be damaged going into November. So really, I think what the Democrats are doing in this race is helping out the Republicans. Okay.
Well, immigration, the death penalty, are these issues not being debated hotly?
Not as much. The death penalty is an issue for Harris because she's opposed to it because she didn't pursue it against the man who killed San Francisco police officer Isaac Espinoza. But really, when it gets down to it, you know, except for the death penalty, which the other candidates pretty much say, I may not love it, but I support it, they really all line up. They want to go after environmental issues. They all speak fairly highly of Jerry Brown, our current Attorney General's job. They all talk about, you know, crime being important. So they might have slightly different tacks, but nothing to really set them apart.
Okay, so now we move to the U.S. Senate race.
That's been fun.
Is that one also, are issues coming to the surface there, or is that another one where it's just campaign ads?
Well, I'd say that issues actually have more in this race because when you look at these 3 candidates, Assemblyman Chuck DeVore, kind of far on the right, former U.S. Senator Tom Campbell, a little more moderate. Carly Fiorina, the former HP executive, has had to move further and further to the right. And again, she is looking great in the polls. I think it's fairly safe to say that she'll be able to pull it out on Tuesday. But the question really becomes then, how are all of these sort of right positions going to hurt her when it comes November? And I think things like climate change, she put out now this week a taxing boxers position on that, equating it with weather. She's worried about the weather. We should be worried about terrorists. you know, she's pro-life. That's something that all the polls had showed would really hurt her. I mean, Campbell could have beat Boxer according to the latest polls, but he can't win a Republican primary.
Right. In fact, if Fiorina is one of those candidates also who's taken different positions on issues in the past, and she didn't always do so well when she was a spokesperson for McCain during the presidential campaign. Do you think she's learned some of those lessons from that at least?
Perhaps. I mean, she's definitely very good on the stump. I think the bigger issue with that is how is she going to explain those changes in positions? Like you mentioned, McCain's position on amnesty, he was for it. The bank bailout, he voted for it. She's railed against Boxer for doing those. You know, we have a state 44% Democrat, 13% Republicans. So there's that huge margin there that already exists. And if she's turned off independents by how nasty this campaign has got, if she's turned off the majority of people in the state that really do care about climate change, I think she's opened herself up to some strong attacks. That said, Boxer is vulnerable.
You know, with the position on climate change, I mean, is she going to mess up her ability to raise funds in her old stomping grounds of Silicon Valley?
You know, perhaps. I mean, she's put about $6 million or so, loaned her campaign that money. That's 2/3 of her campaign funds. So she has raised some money, but Boxer wants to raise more than $20 million, and I think it remains to be seen whether, with, you know, when the field is cleared, if she can do that.
Now you moved us to money, which then means we move to Lisa, because we're going to try to talk past the amount of money being spent to become governor of this state.
Yes, it's hard to get past the money.
And see if we can get to the issues that separate the action on the Republican side, which is where it is.
Well, certainly in the Republican gubernatorial ticket is where all the action has been, although the latest field poll shows that Meg Whitman has a pretty commanding lead at this point. It's going to be pretty tough for Poizner to catch up at this point. But, you know, the two of them actually have gone after each other on a variety of issues. It gives us a little bit of a foretelling of what we're going to see when the presumed Democratic nominee, Jerry Brown, comes forward. Experience, you know, Poizner and Whitman have gone after each other and what kind of experience they have on immigration in particular. Whitman and Poizner have gone after each other on their positions, you know, on immigration. Whitman tied to Wall Street and the bank bailout, jobs, who's going to be able to create the jobs. And so a lot of the attack ads that we've seen, and there have been so many, you know, I asked my colleagues to bring me their mailers, you know, and by the elections, you know, by election day, I can't get out of my desk because the stack is so high. A lot of television, you know, ads as well. So
you mentioned some hot topics, but what are their positions? Are they wildly different on immigration?
No, I mean, you know, Poizner is in support of the Arizona immigration law. Whitman has said she's not. She has said she's not in favor of stripping children of health insurance and those types of things. And Poizner has said that he is. I would fully, and what we're hearing is that the California Nurses Association, the day after the election, is going to launch a Spanish-speaking ad attacking Whitman on her positions on immigration, which are, you know, a little more moderate than Poizner's, but certainly not what the Democrats, you know, are going to argue. So I think we're really going to see immigration, you know, come out in the general.
Is it your sense that people are I mean, I'm hearing that we don't expect a huge turnout. Do you think that's because things have gotten so nasty, or voters just going to stay home because they don't like anyone?
Well, you know, in gubernatorial primaries, we don't turn out that high anyway.
Right.
You know, it's typically in the 30s, and frankly, on the Democrat side, what's to drive the Democrats, really, unless they're interested in the down ticket races, the AG, the lieutenant governor. I mean, is Gavin Newsom's battle going to drive people to the polls? I'm not convinced. Some of the propositions have had some interest, but a lot of them are sort of arcane governance things, which the average voter is not going to be too excited about. On the Republican side, however, there's a lot of interest because of the top of the ticket. And, you know, out in the East Bay where I work, you know, the Congressional District 11 primary, you know, it's really the only competitive congressional primary in the state, and there's been a lot of interest there. I would expect some, you know, some turnout to happen there. So, but again, you know, we don't, in the gubernatorial cycle, we don't tend to show up, and it's unfortunate.
No, Tea Party voters have been so motivated in other states and primaries that we've seen so far, at least in Massachusetts, where we saw them really change the outcome of the vote.
Right.
Have they been a presence in the Republican primary?
There have been some presence. They've certainly been very visible. Whether they'll make an actual impact at the polls, I'm not sure. Our districts are so gerrymandered in this state that the heavily Republican areas are where a lot of the Tea Party people are, and they were going to vote anyway. So are they causing a lot of people in the Bay Area, Democrat to show? I don't know. They're certainly getting a lot of attention.
There seems to be one theme with the Republicans, and that is to cut government spending, corral the government, get rid of the special interests. Has anybody said anything in particular about California's budget problems and how they plan to solve them?
Well, that is what's the latest number, Marisa? You're in Sacramento, the 20.
About 19 billion.
Yeah, a little,
Give or
little
take.
chump change here and there. Well, we've certainly heard Whitman say she's going to cut 40,000 jobs, right? So she's going to cut the size of government, and but really beyond that, I mean, the legislature is practically in gridlock trying to answer this question. I don't think anybody's really realistically expecting the gubernatorial candidates to be able to swoop in and we'll blow up all these boxes. We saw how well it worked for Schwarzenegger.
But haven't both of them been making sort of almost ridiculous sweeping statements? I mean, Poizner on immigration saying, oh, I would, overturn these laws. Well, guess what? You still have a Democratic legislature to deal with. And Whitman, the 40,000 state workers, have we seen any details on who they are? She can't lay off UC workers, for example.
No. I mean, and there's really a lot of questions, I think, in people's minds about what realistically can be done. And as Schwarzenegger has shown us, you can make a lot of wild statements, and then you have to work with the Democratic-controlled legislature, and you now have a situation where Whitman's going after the labor unions and their pensions and their jobs. There's nothing more galvanizing to labor unions than threats against their pensions and their jobs. So they are putting money in, and we're seeing their ads starting to come out, after the election.
Let's move around a little bit more about
Okay.
what's going on out there in Cocoa County with that congressional seat. What's the cast of characters?
Well, we have 4 Republicans running fast and furious for the chance to send Jerry McNerney packing. You remember Jerry McNerney's a long 4 years ago. It made a stunning upset and sent, 7-term Republican Richard Pombo home. Caused everybody to go recoil in shock, and he's now the Dragon Slayer. Now the tide has turned in terms of the wind is no longer at Jerry McNerney's back. The anti-incumbent mood. This is one of the few competitive districts in the state. There's almost dead even party registration between the two parties. So we got 4 people running, 2 on the Bay Area side, 2 in the Valley side. And
The district is what?
the district's 4 counties, and Contra, Costa, Alameda, San Joaquin County, and a little bit of Santa Clara County. The bulk of the Republicans live in San Joaquin County, and the leading candidate out there is a guy by the name of Brad Gehring. He's a wine grape grower, and he's been endorsed by Pombo. He's kind of part of that old Republican guard there, and so he seems to have the advantage there. On the Bay Area side, we have a guy who ran against John Garamendi for Congressional District 10 the last time, and so he's hop, skipping down and trying to challenge, in his neighboring district. So there's a lot of flap about that, but he is the one leading in the tracking polls. I'm told. So
Okay,
David Harmer. So
well, there's our next topic. At least we know what the issue is.
right.
And we sort of know who favors this issue, and that's Proposition 16, David, and that's you over there, as to where does it stand when you have one company that has dominated the airways with the message?
Well, you have, Proposition 16, you have put out there by PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric Co. And it's essentially something that they put together to tamp down these little rebellions that they keep having to put down every few years with different communities that want to break free of them and start up either their own municipal utilities or this new kind of public power situation called community choice aggregation. And Prop 16 essentially would force each of those communities to have a vote of the public and to have a 2/3 majority vote in favor of this, which, if you talk to PG&E about this, they say the 2/3 is perfectly reasonable. They'll point to like hospital bonds, school bonds, which typically require 2/3. And they'll say, 50% of those pass. So what's the big deal? The people who are opposed to Prop 16 will look at that and say, well, yeah, but no one is going to spend $10 million to defeat a hospital bond. And that's about what PG&E typically spends each time it puts down one of these little rebellions. So for the company, it's potentially a money saver if it works. But at the moment, they're spending a lot of money on it. They're up to $46 million at this point.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask. I mean, is that something as a PG&E ratepayer? I kind of go $46 million, and they're asking the CPUC for rate increases this year. Is that something? Is that too nuanced for voters? Do you think people will think about that when they're at the polls?
It's really interesting. It's hard to tell exactly how that's going to pan out. I mean, if you look at the ads that are blanketing the airwaves at this point, they're not PG&E ads. They don't come across that way, and the PG&E is usually mentioned in print at the bottom, so they're on there. They're honest about that, but they're trying not to be seen as just a PG&E group. They want to give this impression that other people are in it, and there are some business interests that are in it as well. But most people who are following politics in this state by this point know it's the PG&E initiative.
If this works, are we going to see a lot of other industries have their initiatives designed to protect their financial interests by not allowing or creating this barrier to any kind of other customer?
It's hard to picture too many industries that could
we
do
have,
that.
Mercury Insurance has
Prop
a
17
measure
is the
on
other
Prop
one. We got
17.
we got two of them there. Yeah.
Exactly, but I mean, there's a lot of businesses where that model simply isn't going to work. But at the same time, this will have a very, very big effect if it does pass, because there are communities around the state that are looking at setting up these little community choice aggregation systems like San Francisco, and they're basically just going to give up if this passes, because there's no way they're going to pass that 2/3 hurdle.
Right, and then also places like Marin County, where they've just created a new aggregation, a new power authority.
They're the first.
They potentially could expand in years to come. Would Prop 16 prevent that from happening? Or make it tougher?
It would make it tougher. They'd have to go out for a vote on that. And similarly, even though there's some disagreement about this, a municipal utility like Sacramento's or LA's, if they wanted to expand to a new community, they'd have to do a vote too.
Well, and SMUD tried to expand into Yolo County, Sacramento Municipal Utility District, a few years ago, and ran into a legal wall from PG&E.
Well, not just that, but I mean, PG&E spent, I think, between 10 and 12 million there to defeat that. And, that was, I think, that particular battle was the real impetus behind this initiative. There was a speech that Peter Darby, the CEO of PG&E, gave at an investors conference back in March, where he was sort of laying out how this thing evolved. And he was saying they were looking at that, where Davis was trying to join SMUD, and looking at all these fights they've had in San Francisco over the years, and they were thinking of, well, are there ways that we can sort of tamp that down and not have to deal with it as much in the future? And they came up with a ballot initiative.
Has the fact that energy is coming from diversified resources prompted PG&E to go forward, or has it helped the cities and municipalities and counties who want to do this convince their voters that they ought to be open to it?
A lot of the people who are interested in community choice aggregation go after it because of renewable power. They say they want to get a much higher percentage of renewable power than PG&E currently has. In a way, I find that a little bit, not exactly deceptive, but it sort of overlooks a really major fact. PG&E is a giant utility. In order to get 15% of its power, 20% from renewables, it has to sign up a lot of contracts with a lot of wind farms and solar farms. If you're Marin County, you don't need nearly that much to get a much higher percentage. So in a way, PG&E, in the debate, PG&E is a little bit at a disadvantage there, because in order for them to get a high percentage, they really have to get a lot of power.
Well, another issue that is very clear on the ballot for voters, and that's coming up right here close to home, dealing with the 49ers, who continually seem to be seeking a home somewhere else.
Well, that's right, Belva, and this time it's the city of Santa Clara, and what we have here in Measure J on the ballot this Tuesday is the same one measure, but two very different ways of looking at it. And I think supporters would say this is a sure thing, a great investment for the city of Santa Clara, a $937 million stadium, that's almost $1 billion, with just $114 million in spending by the city of Santa Clara, direct spending, to get the stadium in town. And that's a much better deal than anybody's seen. If you look around the country, New York City spent $1 zillion. I don't know exactly, I can't remember how much, but that was a very expensive stadium for New York City, for the Yankees. City residents would not have to pay any new taxes. That's right in Measure J. There'd be no cost to the general fund, and it would create 5,000 jobs potentially. These are part-time jobs. Some of them they'd be during games or events, but there'd be a lot of jobs and $250 million in economic activity for the city of Santa Clara.
That sounds really like
Doesn't-
a deal.
that-
So
so
what's
why
so
are they
what's
so-
yeah.
So what's not to
the
like, right? Well,
opposition?
there's plenty
Unless
not.
you're from San Francisco.
Right.
But
Well, there's plenty not to like if you're an opponent, where I think the feeling is this is a real gamble for the city, a $114 million gamble, and really much bigger than that. First, one of the things the opponents say is, first, we've got $60 million that is coming from a redevelopment fund and going into the city's coffers right now that'll be redirected to pay for the stadium. So that's a $60 million loss. Well, it doesn't cost the general funds anything directly, but it's money that would have gone there, and the city's in a small deficit this year. You've also got the creation of a very large $330 million stadium authority, which would sell bonds. The city would be protected from that, but this authority would then have to raise its money with sales of concession rights. Okay, people will drink a lot of beer and eat a lot of garlic fries, but also personal seat licenses. Now, we know how popular that was when the Raiders tried to do this, when they came back to Oakland. It was really poisoned relations with fans for many years after that, and it never worked out. It was never economically beneficial to the city of Oakland. The other piece of the money pie for the stadium authority, the big piece, is naming rights. And naming rights can be very lucrative, but we've also seen that in Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Dallas Stadium in Dallas, the new Cowboys Stadium, the Meadowlands in New Jersey, all of them have tried to sell their naming rights and been unable to do that. So you have a real, so I think you really, the city appears poised to approve this. I think city voters are generally excited about it. And
Was there an organized campaign? We know the Giants have spent, whatever.
the 49ers, yes.
I'm sorry.
Well, they have spent a couple
49ers
they've spent a couple million on this, and the opponents have
More
had
than a couple
few
million, though,
thousand,
right?
have just a few thousand really to spend. It's been fairly low key. The ads have been, I think, very calculated. Unlike PG&E, where they don't have a lot of allies to sell this, Santa Clara, the city council, city leaders, the business community are solidly behind this. Restaurants. So you've got, it's kind of, it's a rank and file kind of thing. You can talk to your neighbor, and you go down the street, and you go to one house, and there's a yes on J sign, and another house, it's a no on J sign. So you get real divisions, but overall, I think it feels more grassroots.
Just quickly, San Francisco's position, have they been heard?
Well, I think they just are wishing, praying. I think somebody used the phrase in a Chronicle story that Gavin Newsom is whistling past the graveyard and saying maybe it won't pass, and maybe we can draw them into Hunter's Point, where Carmen Policy, the old team president, is building a huge development that with a potential for a stadium. I don't know that. I think Santa Clara may be it.
Well, my thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. Great information on issues. Thank you so very much.